Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar 10 tips and tricks to pass the next SAP audit. We'll be speaking to you in the next minutes. Please give the other participants still 3 more minutes to attend. They are logging in right now. So we'll come back in 3 minutes and start with the webinar. See you soon. Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today, 10 tips and tricks to pass the next SAP audit. I hope you will find this interesting. Please make use of our questions dashboard. If you have some questions, I will have a look at them every once in a while and try to answer them. So what are we going to speak about today? As you may know, SAP has today 2 audit types in their portfolio. So the standard SAP contract says SAP is entitled to execute a measurement, the system measurement once a year to control if the amount of licenses that you purchased is aligned with what you're actually using. And to prove that, they can either perform a system measurement, which is you executing SLO and USM and sending those results to SAP, or rather SAP attending on-site, which of course hasn't happened with COVID now, to your offices with 1 or 2 consultants to explore your systems, see what is installed, execute the system measurement themselves, and discuss with you the findings. So let's start with the webinar, and I will just shut down my camera so we can look at the slides better. Here we go. Give it a second. And so we will be speaking about how to execute the system measurement, how to prepare for it, about user licenses, about alternative license types, engines, true-ups, and different strategies that we have found useful in helping clients get a successful result out of the audit. So very briefly, 3 slides about our company. We are specialists in SAP licensing. We have tools for that. SAMQ License Optimizer helps you manage your license configuration in SAP. SetQ is an authorization manager to manage user provisioning, compliance, and role optimization. And we complete these services with our advisory team, helping you defend yourself during an audit, before the audit, negotiate with SAP, for example, in the situation of preparing your S/4HANA migration, or just renegotiating an existing contract. So where do we come from? We were originally in the 80s a systems integrator, and a part of our company is still engaged in that area, especially in Europe. But in 2012, we started the company, we split the company that is specialized in SAP licensing, and we have been doing this since, with tools, with advisory, helping clients on a worldwide basis, coping with SAP licensing issues. Clients go from some few hundred users up to the biggest client, which is above 1 million users in their SAP systems. Our clients started one SAP system, and the biggest one, I think he has around 800 different SAP systems. And we do around 150 projects a year to help clients in those situations. Of course, anyone who is an SAP client is a potential client for us, so they lie in all business sectors. So far about our company. Let's head on and speak about the SAP audit preparation. So, number 1, execute USM and Slow. As you may know, there is a system measurement guide that you find in SAP's help portal. It will explain how you execute USM and Slow, what is to be done, how is this to be prepared, how to download from SAP's server the bill of materials that you have contracted with them, and also import this into your Slow to compare existing licenses with the license counts that you have. What can you also do there? There are guidelines in the system measurement area of the help portal that explain every single engine, the measurement, the things that you need to be doing, looking into what measurements are relevant, what others are just indicators of things that are in use, installed, etc. Now, when you have the simple system measurement, which is something that you execute by yourself and then send the data to SAP, you should understand how to do that. You should look at the things that are there. And of course, the outcome of the USM and Slow are XML files. You can also get some TXT files, still hardly readable files. So there is an option to print out or to export PDF files that are readable and that will exactly show you what you will be sending to SAP. So although you have to send the XML files to SAP, take the work and print out or export the PDF files to look thoroughly at the findings, because this will tell you what the actual finding means, what you're sending to SAP and how far this is relevant. So basically you execute USMM on every single production system and then consolidate the data, importing it in the system where Slow is installed. You review this, you reconfigure things, and once you're happy with the results, you can send this over to SAP. Now, you need to understand that whatever you do with USMM and Slow, it reflects to your actual user classification in SAP. It is not a function that will see what users do and assign them the optimal license type. It just looks at the license key that is assigned to every single user. So 52, for example, for the professional user, and so on. Or maybe an AX if it is an older system. Why is this important? You need to understand that the user classification is something that lies in your responsibility as a client, and is not something that is done automatically by the SAP system or by their team. So it is up to you to decide which license type every user has, assign this user the correct license key, the least expensive license key that still covers the activity of this user. And once you have a proper user classification, then you can go on and execute this USM and Slow. So before the measurement, check the required SP level of the SAP systems and check that you have all nodes installed that are necessary for your measurement. The first step in an audit is that SAP sends you the global license and audit compliance team from SAP will send you an audit request letter. This request letter explains exactly what systems should be are in scope. Control this, because sometimes SAP just doesn't notice if you decommission a system, and they would still request you to measure it, even though it's not necessary. You just need to notify them of the fact that this system is no longer in production. What more to be considered here? In this audit request letter, SAP will also tell you whether they have to look at your digital access. So connected applications, non-SAP applications connected to SAP, and what documents they are producing. Now, in our experience today, this is happening with more or less 50% of cases. Not in all cases, SAP does look into digital access during an audit. If yes, you should also be properly prepared for that. And that means not only executing the digital access estimation report, but going deeper into analyzing the use case that are causing this digital access and evaluating if the measurements, the estimation of SAP is correct or not. Now, mostly, and SAP knows that and tells you that too, this is an estimation report, in opposite to the engine measurements or user measurements, which are accurate. The digital access part is an estimation, and you really need to go down and look at the use cases and exclude everything that is measured, but is not really digital access. Now, if you have a software asset management tool like our SAMQ or another one of the ones that are on the market, before you execute USM and Slow, you have to optimize and reclassify your user licenses to look for a situation where you have assigned every user the least expensive user type possible. If you don't have that, what have clients been doing over the last years, over the last 10, 20 years? Basically looking at your org chart and trying to assign licenses based on the function of a person in the company. This works, but is of course by very, very far not as accurate as what a software asset management tool does, which is looking at the activity profiles, the transactions, application components that every user uses, and then based on that assign a user license. So next one, optimize your user license configuration if you have a SAM tool. What does that mean really? You have, if you look at this report that we use in our tool, you can see the different user types on the left side here that the client has purchased. And you can see the quantities that are manually entered into the tool out of your SAP contracts, bill of materials, etc. And then you have a measurement of how is the system configured right now. So for example, here this client, he purchased 350 professional users, and he has actually 372 users, overall systems, which have assigned a professional user license. Then the tool should name you an optimized configuration. In that case, analyzing the user transaction, the tool is telling you you are really needing 201 professional user licenses for your users. And how does all of this come together? Now, the system is also informing you about some very interesting things here. So 183 people have all actually been assigned the correct license type. On the other hand, you have 187 persons who have been assigned a too high, so too expensive license type. This is something that you need to see because those people need to be corrected. So either the tool does it automatically, like this is the case with SAMQ, or you would have to do this manually, which is quite an amount of work, can still be done, but you need first to find out who are those people. And then you have some people who have a too low license type. This means, for example, they could have, in that case, a worker user or an employee self-service user, which is mostly for particular functionalities within SAP. But if, for example, an ESS user or a worker is working within the finance and accounting system of SAP, these license types wouldn't be appropriate. And in that case, you need to change the configuration and assign those users a professional user license type. So, as said, why use an optimization tool? Because basically you need to make sure that you are not assigning too expensive license types to people. And so the problem is, if you don't do that, SAP doesn't care. SAP just looks at your consolidated measurement, and they will never start digging deep into that and seeing, well, you have here people who have too high license types assigned, so you're basically overpaying. This is not the purpose of the audit. The audit will only control how many users do you have in total, have they been assigned a license, and in occasion, it also looks at things like if you have an employee user, I don't have this one in this list here, which is a user type that is only allowed to do read activity in the system, and this user is still creating documents in the finance system, then they would tell you, you have to buy this user the highest license type possible, the professional user. So really a very superficial analysis that is never to your advantage. You need to take care of this by using additional tools. So before another activity that you need to do before sending USMM or executing USMM and Slow, you need to expire users. Let me just open up the questions thing. So I'll come to that. Let me first talk about the expired users, and I'll come back to the questions then. So expired users means you should control which people have not been logging into the system for longer than maybe 90 days, depending on the policies of your company. It may be 180 days, 30 days. Every company has a different policy there, but usually it is 90 days. And if you see that a number of users haven't been logging into the system, then there is a high probability that you could expire and deactivate those users. First, when you have deactivated and expired them, they won't be counted for the audit results. And this is important to be managing on a regular basis, mostly monthly. This is an example report that we have here in our tool. It shows you the 90 days people, the 60 days people, people who have never logged on into the system, and then different other categories. Now, it is of course also important that you might have users who don't log in into SAP because they're only using SAP through a portal. These are, of course, also candidates that need some type of licensing. And depending on the kind of the portal, depending on the kind of functionality that they are using, they may need an ESS user or a business partner user. But in any case, if they don't really log into SAP but use it indirectly, you won't see their logins, and they will appear here as people who are not logging in. So what we mostly do when we use a tool is we categorize those users in a specific category, which is users without activity, and then look at the list and try to understand what is the reason why they're not logging in. And opposite to that, if you have people who have been working in the system, have logged in the past some time, but not during for more than 90 days, then you would start deactivating them. Brief excursus into the questions. How is the audit with customers with RISE with SAP? Now, RISE with SAP is basically is for HANA Cloud. And with that, what happens is that you get a yearly report of SAP, which will tell you how you have classified your users. No problem there, again, responsibility on correctly classifying the users lies on you. And with the prices starting at $300 list price up to $3,500 for the professional user in RISE with SAP, you need to make sure that you have a proper classification there too. So the only difference here is because you are working on a cloud system, SAP will provide you once a year with a so-called usage report, but it really only shows which users are active in the system, what license keys have they been assigned, but there won't happen any correction of license classifications. So what more am I reading? If you have multiple clients in SAP, is it required to run in every productive client? So I understand with client, you mean an SAP system ID. If this is correct, the way this is done is you, first of all, SAP will tell you anyway which systems are in scope, your list of systems. And in scope are always all production systems and all development systems. In development systems, you have only to pay for developers, and in production systems for all user types. Now, USMM is then executed in every single system. You export the data, you import this data into the system where you are executing SLO, and there the users are consolidated. Consolidated means explicitly, if I have been assigned an ESS user, so a low-level user in one system, and in the other system I've been assigned a professional user, then the highest license type will be the one that counts, but only one license type. Another thing that is important, licenses include mostly other licenses. You need to look into the SAP use rights documents to understand how this works. So for example, a developer includes an employee user. A professional user normally includes a limited professional user. So to understand what is included in every user type, you need first of all to look into your contract, because contracts don't have always the same use rights. And if your contract is linking explicitly to the use rights document, then what stands in the use rights document is what counts, and you need to look at those descriptions there. So you respond to SAP's license audit request and then optimize your license allocation. Are you still liable based upon the previous data? Now, this is a one-shot point in time measurement. It doesn't look back into what happened 6 months ago. And this is basis for discussion very often. I see suddenly, let me go back a second. the whole process that happens in an audit is you get the audit letter, you optimize your user licenses, measure engines, etc. Execute USM and Slow, send the report to SAP. They will provide you normally, if they see some findings, they will provide you with a preliminary audit report that you have to sign off and say, well, I'm okay with the results, I agree with them. And once you have signed off, SAP will lead this to their commercial or sales department, and they will provide you with a mitigation proposal. Those mitigation proposals occasionally include back maintenance. So back maintenance for having been using those licenses for the last year or something like that. This is something you don't have to accept. Since we are measuring the status of the system today, there is no proof that this measurement was valid 2, 3, 6 months ago. So you're not liable for what happened before. You have to mitigate the situation now and true up your systems now. And if you see an offering for back maintenance, just reject it. And we've done so successfully in many occasions. Okay, so when you have a tool here again, you don't have a tool, you need to have your SAP Basis admins looking at the users who have no logons. You have a tool, the tool can be configured to automatically deactivate users which show no login activity, which is helpful because you would always be prepared for the audit when it comes up. So, alternative license type, simulate alternative license type with a SAM tool. What do we see? We see many contracts today. They are getting fewer and fewer, but still most of contracts in the market only contain professional users, maybe limited professional users and one additional user type if the client is happy. Sometimes we even see contracts with just professional users. I want you to look very concentrated in this table. Look at the prices. Professional user 3,200 euros. Employee self-service user 125 euros. These are list prices. So what does that mean? For the price of a professional user, you can have almost 26 employee self-service users. So if you're assigning those 25 people a professional user, you're multiplying the cost of your SAP configuration by 25, 26. And this is exactly what this is all about. So this is here times 5 with a worker user, logistics 3.6 times, employee user 8 times. So this is basically the reason why it is so important to find out what user type does everyone need. So there again, you use a tool, a software asset management tool, you need to make sure when you choose the tool that the tool is able to simulate alternative license types. Because before the audit comes, you can go to SAP, and even if you don't have exchange rights in your contract, you can just push them to exchange some licenses that you bought in the past for more appropriate licenses, or you're planning now to buy some new additional engines from SAP. There you have the pressure and the leverage to say, well, good, I'll buy the new engines, but please exchange here 10 professional users for 250 employee self-service users that I need. I have too many professional users and too few of those, and with that you can avoid additional costs. This is a very, very important thing to understand and to be managing. So simulation of license types is one important thing in general that you should do once a year before you decide to true up your contract and to prepare for that. And another point in time where this is important is when you're thinking about migrating to S/4HANA, you need to do a simulation. So analyze based on the activity profile of the users, find out which of the new license types in S/4HANA, which are 4 only, will be needed by your users. Again, there because of the price differences. So how is the, I'm getting a question here, how is it this tool identifies which license type should be assigned? By authorization objects, by assigned roles, by activity. So yes, yes, and yes, and more than that. Now, SAP has been pushing the last years, and they have changed their contracts to push clients to assign licenses based on authorizations. So, sorry, short sip on my tea to be better able to speak. So we are in contact. We do work together with a client that decided some years ago to set up the authorization-based licensing in SAP. This client is moving away from that right now, because they basically came to a situation where they have essentially 40%, a license configuration that is overpriced by 40%. And we are talking about big money in this occasion. So assigning licenses based on authorizations is something that we support with our tool, because some clients are in that situation, but we definitely would not advise you to go that way. It is much more efficient and much more cost efficient to assign licenses based on activity. And then when we talk about activity, we mean the usage of transactions, of applications components, and looking into whether a user is just writing data, reading data, changing data. These are like the 3 main activity aspects you need to look into. And this is how we do that with a tool. With a tool, you can also compare both options of authorization-based license assignment and usage-based license assignment. What can I tell you? Whenever we do that, it comes out that usage or activity-based license assignment is by far less expensive. So definitely the way you should go. Looking into the engines is important, and it is important on different things. Now, it is not that important basically that you get your engine measurement before the SAP audit, apart from the fact that you want a true up, and that a true up purchase is sometimes cheaper than the purchase you do after the audit, because in occasions SAP won't offer you the same discount levels after the audit. So we always advise clients to true up proactively before SAP comes up with an audit. But anyway, the measurement won't change, and there is nothing you can change about the measurement apart from installing an SAP node that may be necessary to have a proper or a correct measurement. Now, how does it work? You have, for example, here we see the human resources management module, and we see some different counts: e-recruitment requisitions, candidates internal, external, etc., etc. Some German terms here: Stammsätze, betriebliche Altersversorgung, funny things about pensions, etc. So you have those things, but this, let's take the first 3, they apply only to a single product. So you may have up to 10 different measurements for a single engine, and you need to understand which of those measurements are relevant or not. You may trust SAP's audit team and say whatever they measure is fine, or you may want to control if this is correctly done. And this is where I said in the system measurement portal of SAP, you can exactly read the description of the metric for a product and see what this means exactly, if this is the correct measurement or not. You see here, for example, a unit ID. This is the measurement number that you can look up on the SAP server to find that product and to find how this is measured. Also to find out if over the years the metrics changed, and you may want to change the metric because it would be cheaper for you to, etc. So we are being asked here, does your measurement require some form of gathering data for an extended period or prior to an evaluation? So what happens is mostly once clients buy a tool and install it, the tool starts measuring and collecting data that goes over time. And you want to have the data of the last 12 months. If you have your audit, let's say now in 2 months, and you install the tool today, most probable situation is you have your user logs in SAP only for the last 3 months. So you would be using for the measurement the activity profiles of the last 3 months. How good or bad is this? Our experience shows that these results are wrong by about 10%, mostly too optimistic by around 10%. So if you go on measuring and collect the data of a full year, doesn't mean that you have to keep in your SAP logs the full year, but the tool will be collecting and collecting from the last 3 months until it has 12 months together. And after having all those 12 months together, you will have a more proper measurement, because you have some profiles of people who really don't work on that much of a regular basis, especially they have more activity in the year closing and things like that. So mostly you find out after that time that there is a bit of a higher need for licenses. So tools, we install our tool on the solution manager, collect the data from all different systems. They are consolidated in the solution manager. You could install it on any ABAP system just for comfort. Solution manager is often the chosen platform to install the tool, also because it has already RFP connections to all systems set up, and you don't need to start configuring that. So starting in 2022, passport values to digital access will also appear in the engine list and will be billed if there are no other contracts. So passport is the new way of measuring, I'd rather say estimating digital access by SAP, better than the digital access estimation report, no question. Still not correct, still not 100% reliable, still a situation where these things that you see here, financial documents, service and maintenance documents, which is digital access, needs to be controlled on a use case by case. So, and yes, tools are add-ons, by the way. Another question I was getting, most in our case, it is an ABAP add-on that you installed on top of SAP. So what was I saying here? True up your licenses before the SAP audit. Why is that? This is because we have in occasions seen SAP executing the audit, promoting this to the sales department, and the sales department some way punishing the client, but not by not applying the standard discount of the client. Let's say a client has a 50% discount by standard, and but in the mitigation proposal, SAP would be offering a proposal based on list prices because they feel entitled to do so because you didn't show up proactively, and they don't feel compelled to give you the standard discounts. So this is why we say true up your licenses before SAP comes with an audit. This is important. Be proactive in that. Don't adopt a passive attitude there, because then you're delivered. You can't negotiate anymore. You can't discuss license exchanges, etc. It's not that difficult to negotiate with SAP about license exchanges when you're purchasing new products. I had yesterday a situation again where a client was telling me that he just decommissioned licenses, which many SAP salespeople will tell you is impossible. It is not impossible. No one can forbid you to cancel a contract or change a contract to do a partial cancellation. They just don't like it, of course. But rather than canceling licenses, do think of whether you should exchange them for things that you're planning to buy in the near future, or engines that are out of compliance, which is what we are talking about here. When you have an engine and it is out of compliance, well, SAP won't compensate this with other products, other engines that have a surplus, users that are shelfware. But if you make use of a negotiation situation where you're planning to buy new things from SAP, use that occasion to negotiate license exchanges, decommissioning, things like that. So good. What more? So before the SAP audit, now other manufacturers like Oracle, Microsoft, they have a standard true-up process. Since SAP does not have this standard true-up process, it is up to you to set up a date and see, well, if SAP is auditing me mostly beginning of the year, let's decide that end of the year, I don't know, in September, October, November, we will look at our licenses, see if we plan to buy things, discuss about modifications in the contract, do this proactively. You'll get these slides after the audit. So this is an interesting slide. This is a slide that shows results from our projects in the last 2 years. Not all of them, but I don't know. I took all the data that I could gather from our consultants and put this together. And what does it show? It shows basically which clients here on the top side, on the top half, are over licensed and which clients were under licensed after we executed the audit. And you can see that only 10% were in a more or less balanced situation, and most of them had a big over license, so 60% of them, which in average was 2 million euros or $3 million. And many of them had also risk of under licensing. Today, very often caused by digital access, but also by users, engines, whatever. Clients have so many different products, so it's really difficult to stay in control of this situation, especially when you don't use tools. Is that true that SAP doesn't offer limited professionals anymore? Yes, this is true. So if you have limited professionals in your contract, you are entitled to go on buying them. A colleague of mine put this together. I suppose it is from the last price list, but you can see here that the limited professional user is not in here anymore. These are, I think, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 plus 5. That should be the full list of users that are in the list today. So if you purchased in the past limited professional users, fine, you can buy more of them. My advice, though, is analyze this very thoroughly, because limited professional users are basically cheaper professional users, which is fine if you make this interpretation out of that. The limitation is to be defined by the client. So if you plan to use them as professional users with a cheaper cost, fine. But consider that there are even cheaper license types, as we said before, where was it? Here, going from some $125, sorry, this is jumping around with the slides, going from 125,000, this is euros, not dollars. By the way, you need to multiply this times 1.5. 400, so $600, $900, and so on and so on. Consider that these license types could also be cheaper and more interesting than the limited professional user in your type. So Coming back to this diagram, it shows basically that at start, when clients work without tools, there is big room for improvement because they're either hefty over licensed or importantly under licensed, and both situations are such where you don't want to be. If you are under licensed, you want to have provisions in your financial planning. You want to have a budget that covers this under licensing and that allows you to correct this in the next months. If you're over licensed, you know that you need to change things in your contract. Now, having maybe a 10% buffer in over licensing is not a bad thing. It's the usual thing. But when we are talking about these situations here, 40, 60, 80 and more % over licensing, then you have an issue. And then you have a situation where you should be earnestly renegotiating your contract with SAP. Okay, so another thing that happens during the USMM execution. Look out for users without a license assignment and correct this. So the way USMM works is basically whatever user does not have a license key in its file, SAP will assign them the contractual user type ID that you find here in this field in the user management. Mostly you have the professional user here. So by default, SAP will assign those users without a license the most expensive license type, apart from the developer, of course. But this is something you need to definitely take care of before the audit starts. Very important. Look for users who don't have a license key. This is something you can do automatically with the tool or manually. Not that difficult to do that manually either. So our recommendation, assign users the same license type in all systems. It can get quite complicated when you have 10 different SAP systems and users have an employee user here, an ESS user there, a professional user there, and some of them are automatically consolidated by SAP, but in occasions they just in SLOS show license combinations, and they show you 50 users, they have these 3 licenses, 100 users or 1000, they have this other combination. So to make an interpretation of this license combinations is really unpleasant. So if you have a tool, definitely assign users the same license type. If you don't have a tool, make your best effort in trying to do so, because it simplifies very much the interpretation of the findings in SLO. When you have combination license types, it can get really difficult to understand what you have there, where you're under licensed, over licensed, and you need to always start counting things before you can do an interpretation. So rules here, a person needs only one license, even if he works in several SAP systems. Not all license types can be validated. There are special license type, custom license types that SAP can't make an interpretation of. And then you have this license inclusions, like the worker contains an employee license, and so on. The developer contains an employee license too. The professional contains a limited professional. And so there is a hierarchy of inclusions. There is only documented in the SAP use rights, but nowhere with a proper table that simplifies it to understand this. Okay, and then again, you have situations where 2 license types are more expensive than directly buying a professional user. So sometimes it is less expensive to assign a person, a user, a professional license instead of having 2 to 3 different license types over different systems, which in the end adds up to a higher cost. So there again, a reason to not assign people different license types. So I think I have answered all questions. So developers, always a reason for discussions. So developers are the most expensive licenses. Not everyone who has a developer key needs really a license. Not all developers do the same activity. Even an administrator can need a developer key, although he does not develop. So, and when you look at older contracts, you have professionals who were allowed to develop. So interesting too. So what situations do we have here? We have, first of all, people who execute transports. Now, executing a transport is such a dumb activity that I don't need to really a developer key for that. But this is a matter of discussion with SAP always. Do my admins who just execute transports do need a developer license? Not in my opinion. Read the description of the user type developer in SAP's use rights. I don't think that this applies, but this is my own interpretation. I have successfully negotiated it to not have to pay for people executing transports to need to have a developer license. So then again, typical situation, you have external consultants in your company. So KPMG worked with 10 consultants January to March. Then Boston Consulting came April to June with another 20 consultants, but the first ones went away. And then you have the next consultancy who comes and works with you. And in the end, over the year, you have been using 1,000 developer keys. Now, in parallel, you were never using, let's say, more than 100. So what is the right interpretation here? Difficult and not absolutely clear in SAP's contracts, in SAP's use rights. I think we need to adopt here an ethical standpoint and say, well, the number of developers that I have in average in my company or at the actual point in time is what we should take as the basis. We normally like to complete those measurements with real user lists, so names, family first and family names, and come and say, well, these are the people who are really developing in our company who really need a developer license. I don't really care so much about how misconfigured my system is. These are the people who are actually developing. Dear SAP, please accept this list. And mostly, if you have a proper license auditor, he will accept this list. So just take the work of counting developers even manually, because the automatic measurement here is not the most proper one. So what more? I think we are through with this. So unless you have any more questions, we are through with the agenda today. I'll give you 3 more minutes to put some additional questions in. And else, I can only say thank you for attending. It's been a pleasure to speak with you about this. Glad to answer your questions too. And just if you have additional questions, contact us. I'll be glad to answer you via email. I think we have here on the last, yeah, I have my email here. We will also be sending this slide deck to you after the webinar, probably first tomorrow. You'll get the slide deck. Contact us if you have questions regarding licensing negotiations with SAP, audit defense, all of those situations where it is difficult to understand how to act. We'll gladly be helping you with that. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day. See you soon. I'm being asked about our tool. So our tool is called SAMQ. It is an add-on for SAP, and you install it normally on Solution Manager. You can purchase it with a perpetual license and pay your 18% of maintenance every year, or you can sign a yearly subscription, test it for a year, use it for a year, and after that decide if you want to renew it and keep on using it. So simple, standard way of licensing. I'm not seeing any more questions. So again, thank you very much, all of you, for participating. Look forward to see you in one of our other webinars or answering your questions offline. Have a good day. Bye so far.